There was always one variable Dana White couldn't book, couldn't buy off, and couldn't bully into submission. And it had nothing to do with any fighter on the card. It was the sky. Now, with only hours left before the most ambitious event the UFC has ever attempted, the thing he feared most looks like it's actually arriving. And suddenly the whole spectacle is hanging in the balance. Here's the setup. Right now, a 28-meter, 600-ton steel monster nicknamed the Claw is planted on the south lawn of the White House. A roughly $60 million centerpiece built to honor both Donald Trump's 80th birthday and the 250th anniversary of the country's founding. That's the stage. And just hours before the opening bell, the forecast began confirming everything White had dreaded. As of Friday morning, the Weather Channel was calling for a 59% chance of rain across the Washington area, with scattered thunderstorms expected to roll in by evening. The main card was scheduled for 8 p.m. Eastern, landing right inside that window. Why does that matter so much? Because White had been blunt about his one true enemy. Rain he could live with, lightning was the deal breaker. His plan, in his own words, was simply to wait the lightning out and then run the fights, insisting nothing else would stop the show. And now the radar was pointing straight at that single exception, lightning and thunderstorms over DC in the middle of June. But the storms weren't his only nightmare. He told The Hollywood Reporter the three threats keeping him up were rain, lightning, and an army of bugs, singling out swarms of gnats. Picture that giant glowing claw lit up at night, he said, and you'll get gnats, moths, maybe bats, with no idea what else might crawl or fly out of the dark. Bugs, rain, lightning, all three now sitting in the same forecast. Joe Rogan, the promotion's most recognizable voice, had been ringing the alarm weeks earlier, saying he never would have signed off on fighting outdoors at all. Nobody should win or lose a title because the air is muggy, he argued, warning the humidity would wreck the grappling and turn the canvas into something closer to hot oil wrestling. He and his guests had even traded grim jokes about someone catching a lightning bolt, since storms had been pinned to fight day for a while. And Rogan also flagged the sweat and the insects as serious problems. Three different people, White himself, his own executive producer, and the company's biggest commentator, were all circling the exact same threat. DC in June isn't Vegas and it isn't Miami. It's a humidity trap that can turn a summer evening into a sauna. The feels-like temperature was projected to hit 101 degrees in the afternoon, dangerous territory for anyone parked outside for hours. The fighters wouldn't walk out until later, but the crowd would be baking long before the main card, and nobody had a clean fix for it. Humidity, more than anything, loomed as the real threat to the athletes on the Freedom 250 card as the UFC staged its first true outdoor show. White had spent years avoiding open-air fights precisely because of all these uncontrollable variables. But the chance to build a venue on the White House lawn outweighed every logistical headache. That's the tension at the heart of this. He understood the danger going in, named it out loud, and committed anyway, and now the sky seemed determined to test every fear at once. Executive producer Craig Borsari had spelled out the line in the sand plainly. Light to maybe moderate rain, and they'd push to finish the event, but anything past that, rising winds, high winds, 8 miles. And 8 miles isn't much cushion when a summer storm is parked over the Capitol. To understand why the weather felt like such a potential catastrophe, you have to see how long this had been building and how much was riding on it. Trump first floated the idea on Independence Day, saying he wanted real UFC fights staged on the White House lawn on July 4, 2026, to mark the country's 250th anniversary. Standing in front of supporters, he told them there'd be a UFC card right there on the grounds, bragging that there was plenty of land, that they'd build a little octagon, and host somewhere between 20,000 and 25,000 people as part of the America 250 celebration. Dana White didn't blink. He swore it would absolutely happen. The first reports pointed to July 4th, but the date later slid to June, landing on Flag Day and, more importantly, Trump's 80th birthday, a shift that would end up squeezing the weather window even tighter. White himself said security concerns would cap the seating at under 50 people, a dramatic cut from that original 20,000 to 25,000 pitch. In a February 2026 interview, TKO Group Holdings CEO Ari Emanuel narrowed it further to 30 or 40 attendees. So the dream of a packed stadium on the lawn got shrunk down to an intimate few, but the budget stayed gigantic. According to court filings the administration produced in a related lawsuit, the event ran the UFC north of $60 million. $60 million for an outdoor show with a storm in the forecast. White described the sheer scale of the operation, noting they'd normally move in a couple of days early, but here we're setting up more than a month ahead. on top of months of planning before that. And the card they assembled was loaded. UFC Freedom 250 was built as a 7-fight event headlined by 2 title bouts. Lightweight champ Ilia Topuria unifying against interim champion Justin Gaethje, plus Alex Pereira facing Cyril Gane for an interim heavyweight belt, all wrapped inside the celebration of America's 250th and Trump's 80th. In 33 years, the UFC has produced only 11 two-division champions, and 2 of them, Topuria and Pereira, were fighting on this single card, the kind of lineup people kept calling a once-in-a-lifetime night. And now a thunderstorm threatened to be the one factor nobody could script. The promotion was taking unprecedented steps to handle the open-air setting, only the second outdoor event in its history. In the days before the fights, evening temperatures around Washington were hitting 95 degrees with 83% humidity, and the athletes adjusted however they could. Gaethje admitted during Wednesday's media day that he'd been sitting in the sauna before workouts so he could train with his body already overheated, which tells you everything about how real the conditions were. A man chasing a world title at the White House was preparing in a sauna just to survive the climate. Pereira, meanwhile, was spotted drilling outdoors near the Washington Monument with his coaches. This was never just White's headache. The fighters, the fans, and the broadcasters all walked in with the weather on their minds. And the forecast wasn't even the only thing trying to kill Freedom 250. Days out, a legal challenge came flying in, and nearly connected. The Public Integrity Project, based in D.C., filed an emergency application for a preliminary injunction to shut the entire event down, arguing it had been greenlit without the congressional approval required for federal land like the White House grounds and the ellipse, which fall under national park usage rules. A federal judge ultimately declined to stop the fights. But the suit branded the whole thing a volcano of corruption and the first private for-profit sporting event ever held on White House grounds. Exactly the image the plaintiffs wanted planted in the public's head. For a couple of days it carried real momentum. Filed on behalf of a Vietnam veteran and a civic activist, the complaint claimed the structure had gone up on federal land without proper authorization, and that officials skipped the environmental review demanded by the National Environmental Policy Act, violating Park Service regulations on special events and exceeding the government's legal authority. The government swung back hard. The Justice Department painted the plaintiffs as 2 people convinced they had better taste than everyone else, and out to ruin the show for the rest of the country, arguing the case had no real standing and that filing so late was inexcusable given the event had been announced nearly a year before. The DOJ didn't soften it either, scoffing that nobody was trapping the plaintiffs in a jiu-jitsu lock and forcing them to watch, and that the public interest didn't favor handing them a heckler's veto this close to the bell. A jiu-jitsu reference inside a federal filing about a UFC event, only in 2026. The judge rejected the request from the 2 Virginia residents who claimed the administration's approval for the show was unlawful. In his order, Judge Mehta ruled they'd failed to establish both a real likelihood of standing and any irreparable harm, finding their alleged injuries couldn't qualify as injury in fact. He agreed with the government that scrapping an event months in the making wasn't justified, so the suit collapsed and the claw stayed standing. But all the surrounding chaos, the dueling filings, the emergency hearings, the back and forth just days out, painted the picture of a spectacle under pressure from every possible direction. The plaintiffs had argued the event dodged federal permitting rules by hiding behind exemptions meant for the 250th birthday celebrations. But whatever the legal merits, the judge made his call and the event lived. And with storm clouds already gathering over DC, the drama was nowhere near finished. Strip away the weather, the lawsuits, the bugs, and the political theater though, and at the center sit 2 title fights that would headline anywhere, let alone on the South Lawn. Ilia Topuria walks in a massive favorite and the number 2 pound-for-pound fighter on the planet for good reason. The Georgian-born Spaniard reinvented himself from an early career grappler into maybe the most dangerous boxer in the sport, with fight-ending power in both hands and footwork that made finishing Charles Oliveira, Max Holloway, and Alexander Volkanovski look almost casual. 17 fights, 17 wins, 0 losses, he's never even brushed up against defeat in the UFC. Across from him, Justin Gaethje, one of the most thrilling fighters the promotion has, claimed the interim lightweight title by beating Paddy Pimblett and arrived having won 4 of his last 5. The 2 had been feuding non-stop in the lead-up, dragging in personal jabs and vowing to knock each other cold. And that bad blood had been simmering for months, not just fight week. Gaethje, the reigning interim champ, is one of the most technical brawlers ever to step in the cage, still armed with brutal leg kicks and a punishing right uppercut. But his defensive holes have widened at 37. Age matters here. He's marching into the worst possible conditions, outdoor heat, humidity, bugs, at 37, against the division's most lethal puncher. The weather could honestly break either way for him. If he can drag Topuria into something ugly and exhausting, those same conditions turn into a weapon. In the co-main, Alex Pereira meets Cyril Gane for the interim heavyweight crown, with Pereira a slight favorite to become the first fighter in UFC history to win titles in 3 different weight classes. Already a 2-division champ, he'd be charting completely unexplored ground if he beats Gane. Nobody has ever done what he's attempting. He'd been training outdoors by the Washington Monument with his team, adapting to the heat, prepping his body for whatever the lawn would unleash. Back in May, Trump had hosted Topuria, Pereira, and Gane in the Oval Office, a photo op that made his ownership of this whole production unmistakable. His fingerprints were on every inch of it. It all unfolds as a tribute to America's 250th birthday and Trump's 80th. 2 milestones colliding on the same Sunday night, on the same patch of grass, beneath the same storm clouds. Secretary of State Marco Rubio claimed 1 billion people would tune in for Freedom 250 and compared the UFC's rise to the moon landing, 1 billion viewers. Whether or not that number holds, the bar had been set in the stratosphere, with White himself pitching Super Bowl-level audiences. The pressure on every piece, the fights, the broadcast, the weather, the logistics, was immense heading into fight night, and all of it could be undone by 8 miles of lightning. By Friday, the forecast had budged, and not entirely for the worse. Earlier in the week, the numbers had read like a 65% chance of rain and a more alarming 39% shot at thunderstorms. But as the weekend neared, those odds started moving. With the octagon set outdoors, the weather was everything, and White had said plainly that storms could sink the entire show, admitting that of all the logistical threats, from insects to lightning, it was the lightning that scared him most. Here's where it turns though. He'd already gone on record naming his 3 big problems: rain, lightning, and a swarm of bugs, picturing that powerful claw lit up and drawing gnats and moths out of the night. He wasn't hiding from any of it, he put it on the record. His worst fear, said out loud well before fight night, and now here it was, hours away, with thunderstorm warnings circling the capital. Rain chances were set to climb through the afternoon and evening, with isolated strong or even severe storms possibly firing up. But by the time the co-main and main events were due later that night, temperatures were expected to slide into the low 80s, giving fans and fighters somewhat kinder conditions. So there was a window, a genuine one. The afternoon might be miserable, but if the storms cleared early enough, the 8 p.m. main card could still breathe. Borsari had already laid out the contingency. Light to moderate rain, and they'd push to finish the event, the key phrase being finish it, not run it flawlessly, just reach the end. The signs suggested the weather might cooperate even if a few storms popped up nearby during the back half of the card. And that word nearby was carrying a lot of weight. White had stayed adamant that only lightning could stop them, insisting that if it rains they go, if it snows they go, and the lone thing that halts everything is lightning. Specifically a strike within 8 miles of the claw. Suddenly that 8-mile radius was the most closely watched stretch of airspace in all of Washington. More than the Oval Office, the Lincoln Memorial, or the Ellipse. 8 miles standing between Dana White and disaster. Temperatures could peak near 90 during the day and drop to a friendlier 66 overnight, with winds running 5 to 10 miles per hour in the evening. The breeze might scatter the bugs, and the cooler air might ease things for the fighters. But those same swings are exactly what feed storm cells, so it became a race. The storms either clear before the main card, or they linger. And the most expensive outdoor event in UFC history grinds to a stop with 2 championship fights left. What makes it all so loaded is that White didn't blunder into this. He's admitted he usually hates promoting outdoor cards because of the weather. But this occasion was simply too big to pass on. He knew. He said so publicly. He named the bugs, the rain, and the lightning as his 3 problems weeks before any of them hit the forecast. Then built a $60 million steel claw on the lawn anyway, stacked it with the best card he's ever put together, and bet everything on the DC sky behaving for one Sunday in June. UFC Freedom 250 goes down on June 14, 2026, celebrating the nation's 250th anniversary alongside President Trump's 80th birthday. And the weight of those 2 milestones is exactly why no storm, no lawsuit, and no cloud of gnats could make Dana White flinch. He powered through a federal injunction, through weeks of logistical chaos, and booked a man who has never lost a professional MMA fight to compete on the South Lawn of the White House. The whole world is watching, and so is the sky over Washington. His worst fear came true. The lightning's in the forecast, the rain is coming, and the bugs are waiting for those lights to flick on. Stop the show or not, this is precisely the scenario he said terrified him. Now he just has to do what he always does. Stand there, stare it down, and wait for it to pass. Because one way or another, the fights are happening.